Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is Harrison's Garage. I'm Harrison, and today we've got a fun install for the truck. We're going to be putting in auxiliary switches. Now the truck itself did not come with them because it came with the Max Tow package. For 2023 on the HDs, the Max Tow package removes the auxiliary switches and adds in things and features like that reverse steering knob. Now, I did contemplate just pulling out that whole module, putting in a new module like the one in my old truck with the auxiliary switches that would essentially delete the reverse steering feature. I don't think I'll ever use or need it, but I didn't want to remove that feature from the truck in case I were ever to resell it and someone did want that. So what we're going to do is approach the aux switches in this truck a little bit differently than the one in my old truck, where I utilized the factory PDC box up in the driver's side of the hood there. We're going to be using the Switch Pros SP-9100 and using the SDHQ, if you're not sure what that stands for, that's Super Duty Headquarters mount, as well as trim mount to mount these switches sort of down below the steering wheel on the driver's left knee area. And there were a couple different options as far as where I wanted to mount the controls for this. That is what I ended up choosing after just kind of reading a bunch of different reviews. That's where I wanted the switches to be for me. So we'll go ahead and obviously show a lot more of that once we get the install going. But right out of the box, we get this mount here. This will mount the power module vertically in the hood. And like I said, this will mount the control board in the cab. Popping open the box, we get the instructions for the Switch Pro itself. And pretty much everything that comes in that box. This is the cable that runs between the control module, I guess the power module, and the control buttons. Here is the Switch Pro. This is the power module. This is the whole system. This is what makes everything work. Unlike the sort of other truck of mine where I had the, I guess, relay whole setup, relays in the power distribution console in the PDC box, this is just one solid state sealed system. Everything runs through this. It's a lot simpler, cleaner, neater, and more compact. So also comes with a bunch of different stickers to identify what the lights will be, I guess what the switches will be controlling, whether it's lights, air compressors, horns, air horns, train horns, that type of thing. Still to be decided on a few of these, but I do have some accessories in mind already. And this is a sort of bezel that goes around this guy. Once you've got the stickers on there, it pops on and off. We've got some sort of wire loom, a little bit more. Well, it's starting to fray a little bit, and a inline fuse. It looks like for the connection to the battery, direct connection to the battery, and looks like a bunch of just different sort of butt connectors, zip ties, and a few T-taps. I will probably be using a few different types of connectors that aren't here, just because I prefer the ones that I've got. And this is what will connect the Switch Pro itself to your accessories. This will slip on here. From here you'll have, these wires will go to your accessories with a few exceptions. Some of these will go, I believe, to the control module, but I could be a little bit off on that. We'll touch base on that later. And should have everything we need right now to get started. So what we're going to start with is fix this power module, the whole thing, to the mount. Get that bolted on, and then look at attaching this into the truck. Okay, the first step here is to mount the power module to this SDHQ mount. Now, there is very little in the way of instruction on what to use to mount this module to the mount. I took out all the hardware sort of included with the, you can see here, the SP-9100. We don't need those for now. Check out these parts. The installation manual for this online says just use the hardware that comes with the SP-9100. So when I'm looking at it, some of these things I don't think we'll be using. including these brackets here. I don't think we'll be using these or these studs. But what I do have to work with are these nylock nuts here. Those nylock nuts, or these retaining nuts here with this sort of serrated edge to them. So I think I'm going to use a nylock. Okay, I know I said I was going to use the nylock, but they don't fit the bolt, so we have to use these other guys, and they are a different size. They are 9/32, so we're going to go ahead and start with that. Okay, and that gets the whole switch module, power module, mounted to the mount here. Next thing we need to do is go over to the hood and then disconnect, well, I'll just show you, disconnect the switch off of the fuse box here. So we've got the fuse box, and then we've got this switch that needs to be pried loose because we are going to be mounting the SDHQ mount to this screw, or this 10mm, and this spot here. In order to do that, this needs to be pried out of the way and drop down. There we go. We can do that by prying those two clips loose, backing out this pigtail connector, and dropping the module in place. So that's going to be what we're going to do next. Okay, I off camera went ahead and got this declipped. It took a little bit. I ended up getting it removed by sort of combining the pry bar with just my hand yanking on the clip, pulling it down and then using the pry bar to pull it out. Not the cleanest, but it's been pulled out now, so got the two barbs are still intact. Go ahead and remount that on the SDHQ mount once we get that bolted in. So I'll go ahead and remove these bolts and proceed. Let's do a quick test fit, drop this in place. Move that harness out of the way there. There we go. Should fit nicely. Okay, go ahead and note real quick that these are the two holes where the clip here will attach to this harness. So see if we can't get that attached before we bolt this together. Okay, that's this top bolt done. I'm gonna go ahead now and just kind of check alignment on the rest of this before I cinch this down, make sure nothing's pinched in the wire harness, and then we can move inside the cab and look at running the cables through after getting everything mounted there. So this really should be a pretty straightforward install. Okay, that is the whole switching unit completely installed. That's all it is. Now you have your basically the output where you're down below, and then your input from the switches up top. And we'll be running eventually here a couple of signal wires inside this main fuse panel. I think I'm going to drill a hole through maybe the bottom here, run them up through inside here. We need to tap a fuse for basically ignition power, and then one for essentially when the lights come on, so the switch panel itself inside the cab will be able to turn on the backlight once the headlights come on. So we'll be tapping two fuses, but first we got to run it. Okay, before we move on to sort of under the dash area and install this along with this, what we're going to do is prep the communications cable. In order to run this through the firewall, I'm going to be removing this connector here, just so the hole can be much smaller. If you read the instructions, this one is not meant to be serviced, it's not meant to be removed, so if you try and pull it off, you're not going to get it back on. So we're going to go ahead and remove this one. Now, they say to start by prying up on this area here. You take a small screwdriver, put it into this opening, and pry open on the sort of housing here, on the housing, and this will allow it to move forward into sort of like that serviceable position. So it pops forward a little bit, just kind of, you know, right there. You can see it peeking out beyond the housing. And they say to use like a pick or something, or you can reach in. I'm going to use a nail that I blunted. They do say like a paper clip that's been rounded over. This is just a blunted nail. I'm going to go ahead and reach in through and then try and push through and then pop each of these cables out. Now, before you do that, take a picture just so you get the orientation correct. White should go, you know, orient this such that you have your clip on top and you get white on the top left, black top right, red bottom left, and then green bottom right. Okay guys, so before, I guess in the last clip, you saw me say I was going to use a rounded off brad nail. That was the wrong shape. It was, you know, square, rectangular. It didn't quite fit in the hole. So what I'm doing instead is using a paper clip. This one is circular. And one of these large paper clips is the exact diameter you need. I'm going to try and show you here. What we're doing is we're going into these rounded holes here, and as you'll see, just line it up. It fits just, like barely. It's the perfect size. Now, what we're doing is to depin this thing, these rounded holes will push down on the retaining clip and allow you to pop this out. So I did one off camera. I'm going to try and just show you guys one and do the others off camera. So we'll see how my luck goes. This really is kind of a somewhat luck-based thing, but you will get it eventually if you have the exact tool. I will say the safety pins, I tried those as well. Two pointed, it won't disengage the locking mechanism here at all. So I'm going to try putting it into that hole, giving it a decent push, and this is where the luck comes in, is whether you catch it or not. And you should feel a click, and right now I'm not feeling it, so I'm just going to try and move on to a different one for now. That one I might have felt it. Let's give it a tug. Oh, got it. So here's the black one out. And again, I do want to stress, make sure you take photos of what this looks like beforehand, so you know exactly where they are meant to go back, because it's crucial they're put back in the same spot. So you've seen me do one. I think what I'm going to do is finish this up off camera, and then we'll go ahead and feed this through the firewall. Okay, now that we have the I guess the Molex connector separated, before we jump into the cab, what I'm going to do is just prep this new trim piece and get this mounted to it. So the first thing you'll do is use your bezel, and you'll see it kind of goes flush up against this facial piece, I guess the front piece of it, and it will act as a standoff. It feels like a 3D printed type plastic, acts as a standoff to separate the switching interface from this plastic trim piece here. So once we have that ready to go, flip it over, use our backing plate here. You can kind of see it's got, well, it's kind of like a nice plate. Anyway, we will thread this over and onto here. This is how it will sandwich. I guess this is kind of how the stack up will look. This will ensure it is secured. Before we do that, however, what we want to do is thread in the securing studs, and then that will allow us to secure it with a matlock nut. So here's the studs. They just thread into the back of this, I guess the control panel, switching panel, if you will. Okay. Once you've gotten all these kind of in there, these studs don't thread in very far, maybe 2.5, 3 turns at most. Just give them a little bit of pressure here. You don't want to destroy the threads at all. Just give it a little pressure and kind of tighten it down like you saw me doing. Then we go ahead and run this through. And on this trim piece here, you'll note there's an arrow pointing down here. That's the bottom. You can orient this way. There's the Switch Pro writing. You would want that obviously upright so you can read it. And that's kind of how you orient it. Push the screws through. Line up the backing plate here. There we go. And now we can secure it with our nylock nuts. I believe these were 9/32 on the socket, so I'm going to go ahead and thread these on gently, and then until the nylon starts to engage, and then go ahead and grab my 9/32 socket and go ahead and ratchet these guys down. You know what? I was wrong. They are not 9/32. The other ones are 9/32. These are 10/32 or 5/16 if you're going to look at it correctly. Now this one just happens to be kind of broken, but it'll do the job. Okay, now that the Switch Pro sort of Switch Pro controller is now mounted to our trim plate. We'll take a look before we put it in the car, in the truck. You'll see there's no gaps here. It looks nice and clean. This panel should look very much factory. So let's go ahead and jump over to the truck and see how that looks. Okay, so this is where these auxiliary switches are going to go in the truck. It'll mount just like this, and as far as I can tell, this piece here is a RAM part. Matches exactly. Even has the sort of Mopar part numbers on the back. The only thing they've done is it looks like they've gone in and just kind of maybe with like a glow forge or something put their logo on it. It even has the arrow down at the bottom, just like this one does. In order to get this installed, all we need to do is pry this guy off and then clip this one in place, and then our communications cable will plug right in here. We'll then feed it through the firewall, but first things first, pry this off with your non-wiring pry bar. This has 4 clips. Since we have the factory one to reference, we know exactly where the clips are. The next one will be down at the bottom left. So with your pry bar, work your way down towards that bottom left, pop it out. The next one, of course, is top right and then bottom right. So we're just gonna feed each of those corners, popping those clips. Careful not to damage any of the surrounding trim. If one of those clips is stubborn, move on to the next one and come back to the first one. That was difficult. Come in behind here, pop it out. There we go. So run this through and then clip this in place. Okay, as you saw real time there, I had trouble getting this top right clip in place, and it wasn't an issue with the, I guess the receiving end of the clip buckling or anything. It was a fitment issue on the length of this stud here. It was hitting the plastic surrounding bezel, so I think the thing to do will be to mark and just trim this stud a little bit shorter and then reinstall. So I'm gonna go ahead, meet back up with you once I got this mounted back in the truck. Okay, we now have our piece here ready to go back in the truck. However, you'll see, although I have cut it flush here, I am still running into an issue with the nylock nut itself impacting right here. So what I'm going to do is take a pair of flush cuts in the frame here, just kind of nip up and around that, and then should be good to go. Okay, I now have that clearanced. Go ahead and grab your switch panel trim piece and should be able to slip this in there now, and you'll see this is kind of where the nylock nut was and the issue was. So hopefully this will just clip right in without any issues anymore. Wonderful. So that's perfectly in. Kind of come on back here. This is what it will look like. Now I haven't put any of the stickers on here yet. Not 100% sure what all of them will be. I know I'm going to do rock lights, probably train horn, light bar, and reverse lights. I'm not sure what the other 4 will end up being, but for now they might be blanked out, but we will see. Anyway, I'll put this in the parts bin for future use and come back with you to run the communication cable through the firewall. Okay guys, it's sometime later. I thought I'd come back with you and show what I've done. First things first, I've got the communication cable plugged into our switches up there, and then kind of runs down and around. And I decided to utilize this existing grommet here to fish this through. It's one I've used in the past on my Chevy and also on my 21 Ram. I will be coming back later and putting some silicone RTV around that hole just to shore things up a little more. There is a sort of another pass through right up there in between those 2 bolts in that hole. That is a plastic pass through. I am going to save that opening for the lift. Put a little Easter egg in this video for any of you fans of the channel. I am going to use that pass through for the lift, which will be a Kilderman kit. I'm going to be using that pass through, the shop will be using that pass through to run the airlift controls through the firewall. So make sure they utilize that one, and I left them the space to use that for the lift. So stay tuned the next couple of weeks, months or so, another month or so, for that lift kit. That'll be installed through the shop, but I'll have it on the channel here for you guys. Anyway, we'll go ahead and jump out of the engine bay and take a look at where this communication cable comes out. Okay, up into the engine bay now, you'll see the communication cable coming up there, and it will run behind the PDC box. This is the box that I use to facilitate sort of the old school relay setup for the aux switches on the 21 truck. This communication cable is coming back here, running sort of just along some factory, there we go, along some factory cables here. I've got it zip tied to an existing tube, passing it under this plastic support for the battery tray. Again, over here. And I may zip tie it here in a minute once we get everything all buttoned up. I've gotten everything, sort of started here. What I've got is, I'll just pull this out of the way. This is the communications cable. I'm connecting this last. Beneath that is the 16-pin connector here. And what I've done was, before I connected that, I separated these wires, the 16 wires coming out of it, into bundles of 3. This bundle is 4 wires only, and it is switches 1 through 4. They're at 20 amp rated. And these are the 6 wires, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 wires rather, for the 35 amp switches. The 2 blues get wired together to your accessory for a 35 amp draw. The 2 greens, same deal, purple and sort of like off-white, same deal. If you want to wire 2 smaller accessories, say you wanted pod lights on your A-pillar and maybe pod lights on your roof rack or something to the same switch to come out at once, you could do that. 1 set of pod lights to this one, 1 set of pod lights to this one. So I just kind of wrapped them, created my own loom in electrical tape. I will coil these out of the way, sort of somewhere down here, until I am ready to install accessories. The other set of wires, that's sort of black, white, teal, and there's also a pink wire beneath it. I've wrapped in the loom that came with it, actually. this guy and use my own heat shrink on either end just to keep it from sliding, slipping, keep it nice and clean down in here beneath the fuse box. And my plan for now is to, I've also taken the black negative terminal, put on my own crimp. Theirs was not a heat shrink, so I put on a heat shrink one and then covered it in more heat shrink just to keep it black all the way to the end there. And the sort of bluish, light blue, and then white wire are going to be used in the fuse box. The pink wire won't be used, at least not for me, so I will either coil this out of the way or cut it, one of the two. Now the instructions say to mount this to the negative terminal on the battery here. This wire is nowhere near long enough. The reason it says to do that is because it is going to say do that because the best ground can be achieved on the battery. I am just going to do chassis ground. If it's good enough to operate the entirety of the truck systems on, it's good enough for this switch as well. If I have any issues with this switch, I will extend this cable to the battery, but I don't think I will. So what I'm going to do is off camera, go ahead and get this connected, wired up, and then come back with you once it's time for the T-taps. All right, guys, it is the next day. I've done some wiring, but we'll get to talking about that in a minute. What I wanted to first do was just discuss, what's needed to sort of get your fuses tapped to the right location. The instructions, they're general. They're not specific to, say, a Ram truck or whatever you're working on. I looked through underneath here and found a fuse. In fact, it was this fuse right here, this number 10 fuse. That's the ignition fuse. However, there's power to this even when the ignition is off. And, well, we can just check that right now here. Okay, so there's power going to this accessory fuse. And if you have a multimeter, this is the time to break it out. Go for it. So first what we'll do is take a look at the ignition accessory fuse. Start on a ground and then just take a look at the ignition fuse. And you'll see it's got 12.7 volts there, 12.68. So this is the ignition fuse. The accessory position in the truck is off. It's not in any way running right now. It's still getting power. By the way, if you're using a multimeter, just set it to DC voltage with the straight line over the V and 20, and then you'll be able to read sort of this output. Now, what I wanted to do was essentially not send power to the switch unit if the truck is off, if the ignition is not in the accessory position. I found a fuse in no way related to the words ignition or accessory. It's the sunroof and USB port sort of fuse, and it's another 10 amp fuse just next to the ignition accessory one. It's right here. So I'm going to put the diode on that, and you'll see I'm not getting any reading on the multimeter. If we go ahead and put the truck in accessory, come back here, take a look at that same fuse, and we will now get a reading of 12.5 volts there. So that's the fuse I'm going to tap for my purposes. The similar sort of process to determining the fuse you need for the light dimming, I'm going to go off the cab lights. I know when the cab lights turn on, this will send power to it. Right now, cab lights are off. We don't have any power. So essentially this will see power go to it when the cab lights turn on. That's the fuse we're going to tap for the white wire. That's going to trigger the switches in the cab to dim when this gets power. Now that we know which fuses we're tapping, we've got the light blue wire we're going to send to the sunroof fuse here. And we've got the white wire we're going to be sending to the cab light fuse here. Now, I've got the pink wire kind of coiled up. I've chosen to coil it up and not cut it short because I am possibly going to be using this to install backup lights. This will be my external trigger if I want my backup lights to turn on automatically. When I put the truck in reverse, I will hook this up to those, up to the backup light fuse. I took a second before I finished this connection up, just kind of wanted to show you guys what I'm doing. This is the fuse, sort of splice fuse tap that I got from the kit. I have a bunch of fuse splices just from all the projects I've done. I'm choosing to use this as a fuse splice to tap into the cab light fuse in the fuse box. The kit assumes you'll find a wire. The kit assumes you'll just find a wire somewhere under the hood here that will dim the control panel. Rather than go searching for another wire somewhere else in this hood, running this wire elsewhere, I just figured it would be neater and easier to keep it all here. So I just used another fuse tap for the cab light. So what I'm gonna do, well, what I did do was splice these using my butt connectors. I'm gonna run heat shrink over that here and then here, make it nice and clean, and then do that for both and get these tapped. Okay, I've gotten the fuses worked out. I guess the factory fuses worked out. You can see the factory fuse. I'll throw on screen here a graphic to point it out there, and then the other one on the left there, sort of there. I will say I gotta kind of cop to this. I didn't check the fuse taps that came with the kit because the kit was a SP-9100 Switch Pro 9100 from SDHQ for the RAM 3500. I assumed that these taps, these ATA circuits, were compatible with my fuse box. The SDHQ kit only really focuses on, I suppose, the trim piece in the cab, and does not do anything to address this fuse box issue. The ATA circuits that came with the kit are these, I believe they're just micro fuses, and they are too wide and too tall and do not fit in the fuse box here. I needed a mini or ATR fuse, so I ran over to AutoZone and picked this up, just a ATR Busman ATA fuse because I wanted it today. You can order them on Amazon as well. But while I was there, I did not remember to grab the corresponding fuse that will fit into this ATA fuse circuit, because the one that came with the kit again is the wrong size. So I have two fuses to go grab before I can get this thing operational. But what I have done is finish up the wiring here. I got my ATA fuses butt connected and then heat shrunk, and I've put them into these factory locations. So that should sort of take care of everything in the fuse box until I get those replacement fuses for these ATA circuits. I've got my external trigger wire for eventual, say, backup lights or something. I will, put this or connect this to the backup fuse once I get backup lights. That way, if I put it in reverse, it will automatically kick on the lights, or I can override it and just press the switch on the Switch Pro. So for now, that will button up the fuse box. The only other thing that remains to be done is to connect this power cable to the battery terminal. Now, once that's done, we should be live and ready to go. But first, I'm going to hop over to AutoZone, grab those fuses, and then connect this up, and we should be there. Okay, guys, I'm now back from AutoZone. I've gotten my ATA fuse there and there thrown in. They only had 10 amps. I think I will order some 5 amp micro 2 fuses, but for now, these will do. That's now done and dusted, sealed off. But for now, let's go ahead and try and test this out. So what I'm going to do is, as a final step, connect the communication cable. I'm going to go ahead, hop in the cab, and see how this works. All right, it is the next day. As I was in the middle of filming that last clip, my phone just switched over to CarPlay, so I just kind of wrapped up for the day and figured I'd come back with you today. Have the stickers mounted, so I'll just go ahead and turn you guys around and show you those. Okay, I have all the stickers mounted on here for what I'm planning on having as far as accessories go. I've got rock lights here, underglow. Just probably going to get a second kit of rock lights and mount them on the frame at various locations. A light bar. I'm going to get the same Baja light bar I had on the other Ram, put it in the grill. Reverse lights, which will be mounted to the sort of backup sensor. So well, not sensor, but as soon as it senses the reverse lights are on, the factory reverse lights are on, these will come on their own, as well as be able to be switched on separately from the factory reverse lights. And then an air horn. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a Kelderman kit. So the Kelderman will have an air tank, compressor and all that. So I figured it'd be really easy to just throw in the air horn. I never really went this route on the other truck because I still had the spare tire mounted. Never got around to pulling it off. So as far as putting or placing these stickers on the Switch Pro, it's not too difficult to do. You're not going to get it, perfect. You'll see, for instance, the rock light sticker is a little bit shifted to the right. The rest of these I got a little bit better at. They're pretty dang close. I ended up just using a sort of like a razor blade and sliding it under the backing paper, getting a corner on the razor blade and then slowly just kind of placing it, and then with the other hand working it across, lifting the razor blade out. And that really did secure these in place nicely. Now, the final step here for finishing this off, you'll notice I've got 3 blanks. This just covers up the white glow. If I do have accessories that I'm not currently thinking about that are going to be going here, if I do have other accessories, they will go here. I will say these are the switches 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're 20 amp max. 5, 6, 7, and 8. They are 35 amps. The horn is nowhere near 35 amps. It's just a solenoid that actuates in an airline. So none of my accessories were 35 amps, or I guess greater than 20. So I just put the horn over here, which is kind of the farthest away from me, a little bit harder to see and reach when I'm driving. So I try not to accidentally hit that when I am driving. But the final step here is to mount this 3D printed type bezel. What I really like about this is once it's mounted, when you mount it, you just click it into place here. It goes on pretty easily and it comes off pretty easily. It's not like it's difficult. It gives you this tactile feel, so you're driving, you don't have to wonder which button you're pressing. You can kind of feel it. You just reach down, you go, okay, 1, 2, over 4, here you go. So it's easier to feel. I'm going to go ahead and put the ignition accessory, make sure my CarPlay stays off, and then show you what it looks like with it on sort of at the dusk hour here. Okay, we have the ignition and accessory. We've got power to the switches, and you can see they are a little bit brighter than you'd like. This is, I believe, let me find out. Yeah, so this is the brightness that they default to. I think it's like 70% of their max, and it's sort of like the daytime brightness. You cannot change or adjust that level of brightness. At daytime, it's just a little bit lighter than I would like it to be. And during the daytime, none of these other lights here or here are backlit at all. Because of that, it's a little bit out of place seeing these backlit. So I am mulling over just taking that white dimming switch, that white dimming wire in the fuse box, and then connecting it rather than to the fuse that currently taps the cab lights, just connecting that white wire to the blue wire. That way they'll always be dimmed, essentially making them so dark, the backlight's so dark during the day they look off, and then at night they will look more appropriate. So at nighttime you can fully adjust it, and when I say nighttime, it's just anytime it senses 12 volts to the white wire, it is dimmable. At least these switches are dimmable. So we're going to go turn on the headlights, turn on the cab lights, and you can see they've now been dimmed. Now you can adjust this through your phone on Bluetooth, or you can take off this plastic bezel, tap the center of the Switch Pro 3 times, and this turns on programming mode. Here you're able to actually program how bright these little amber indicator lights are by turning them down down like so. They were all the way up, because from where I'm sitting, it is a little bit tough to see them unless they're all the way up. So there you go, all the way down, and then take them back all the way up. So that's all the way up. I'm sure it's a little bit fuzzy on camera, but it's clearer in real life. Now, to change the backlight sort of level with the headlights on, you press the number 8 switch, and that's all the way down. That's up 1. So if we're coming back to just trying to compare it to factory, again, all the way down, and that's very, very close. I've gotten the color pretty close. There's maybe a little bit too much bluish purple in there that I'm still trying to work out. And you can go very, very bright. So I'm going to take these all the way down and maybe up 1. Go ahead and replace the, press the middle button, come out of programming mode, and then go ahead and replace the bezel. And there we go, back to full brightness, and then sort of evening brightness. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, whether I connect the white dimming, switch dimming wire to the blue wire so they're always dimmed, or leave it as it is where it's, you know, bright during the day. And, you know, driving around at this hour, you know, all these switches are pretty much muted and kind of comfortable, and then these ones are extra bright. So I'm leaning towards having them always dimmed, which is a pretty simple T-tap into the blue instead of that fuse tap, which we can take a look at in a minute. So this is how they look at the moment, and I'm very pleased with sort of how the stickers look in here. Putting you guys in, so very pleased with how the stickers look, how everything sort of operates. If you press it, you get they come sort of default from the factory as latching, where you press it once, they stay on, you press it again, they turn off. I've programmed the horn already to just be momentary, and you can also select strobe or flashing, so I might, you know, maybe program this in the future to be strobe, so it'll go beep, beep, beep on its own. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to review was this white switch, this white wire rather, is currently tapped into the clearance lights on the truck, the cab lights up there. Whenever those cab lights turn on, it will dim the switches. If I want to keep these just constantly dimmed, what I would do is just snip it here, cut it there, and then run a T-tap into this blue wire. That blue wire is getting power anytime the engine is the ignition is an accessory, which means it would be always dimmed. Which I'm leaning towards doing. I'll have to drive around with it for a few more days to see what my preference is, but that is an option available to you. All right, guys, I hope you found that video fun, entertaining, and helpful. If you did, subscribe to the channel. If you aren't already, like this video. It helps keep the channel going, helps keep me going. And as always, stay tuned for more.